Hi, my name is Amit, and before I really get into the topic for today's video, let's do a quick short exercise that I promise is topical. So here you have 5 numbers before you, just look over them and remember them: 2, 3, 5, 7, and 11. Now, you have another number before you. I want you to take the sum of the numbers from the previous slide and multiply it with this number. Now, so just to quickly repeat what I just said, you want to take the sum of the numbers from the last slide and multiply it with the number before you. And it's obviously fine. It's slightly tough, but I promise it's related. So if you ended up with the right numbers, you should have gotten the sum of the numbers from the first slide, which was 2, 3, 5, 7, and 11. That sums to 28. Multiply that with 13, and you should have gotten 364. This is just one way you could have manipulated it in your head. But the way this is related is when you were doing that problem, you were using something known as the visual spatial sketchpad placed in your working memory to essentially manipulate numbers. So you're taking 2, 3, 5, 7, and 11. You're remembering those numbers when I told you to. You are adding them all together to get 28. Then you get another number, 13, and now you're multiplying that together, and you're finally ending up with your final number, 364. And this works into Baddeley's model of working memory, which is the topic for today's video. And here's just the basic structure of the model of working memory that Baddeley proposed. And so that has a central executive, which is sort of the central component, and then the visual spatial sketchpad, which is for manipulating visual information, and then the phonological loop, which is for auditory information. These sort of are both like two slave systems that connect at the central executive. So a bit of history on this model of working memory. Well, it was proposed in 1974. It was just to present a more accurate model of primary memory, which is just sort of another term for short-term memory. It was proposed by Alan Baddeley and Graham Hitch in 1974. And so just going piece by piece, let's first look at the central executive. So this is the main system. It's a supervisory system, and it sort of coordinates the two slave systems, which would be the visual spatial sketchpad and the phonological loop. And it has the power of selective attention, sort of focusing on one key bits of information, and it's able to encode this new information and sort of like pass it along to long-term memory. But yeah, it's essentially a supervisory system that controls and regulates cognitive processes. Now we have the phonological loop, and this is what deals with auditory information. So there's two parts with the phonological loop. It has the phonological store. This is a short-term store for auditory information, so speech inputs sort of flow into this. You remember it. And then there's an articulatory loop, or in the diagram, it shows a subvocal rehearsal. It's essentially just you have your inner voice that's really just refreshing this memory. And so the phonological processes are shown to be vital to actually learning language from a young age. And they're also shown, evidenced by the fact that similar words are much harder to remember, because it's much harder for the subvocal rehearsal to keep them in that short-term store when you're trying to remember a list of similar words versus different words. But also the fact that a defective phonological store actually helps explain many problems that aphakic patients have. But furthermore, articulatory suppression, when people are actually told to repeat words or say random gibberish out loud while trying to remember auditory information, it makes it much harder. And that's sort of because your subvocal rehearsal is now suppressed because you're trying to say something out loud. So this is just sort of what evidences the phonological loop. And finally, what we sort of started with, the visual spatial sketchpad, it's what handles visual and spatial information. So for example, mental math or drawings. If I'm trying to draw a flower by memory, then I'm going to have the picture of that flower in my head, and I'm sort of looking back to it as I'm drawing. But also, it can actually work simultaneously with the phonological loop. So if you look back to the diagram that we had earlier, you can see that they both sort of connect to the central executive. So they're actually able to work simultaneously. It's been shown through different experiments. And there's two components here, which is the short-term memory, the spatial short-term memory, and the object memory. The spatial short-term memory is how one is able to learn and able to remember where they are in sort of comparative representation to other objects, while the object memory is the portion that is essential in remembering what an object is. And this has also been expanded on with like people talking about the visual cache, which stores information about form and color, or the inner scribe, which deals with spatial and movement information. But yeah, there's like different components of Visual Spatial Sketchpad, but yeah, those are the key aspects of Baddeley's model of working memory. I hope you enjoyed the video, and just remember, Central Executive, Visual Spatial Sketchpad, and Phonological Loop. Thanks.